मैं सोच रहा था कि आज साल 2021 में है, हम फ्री बॉर्डर्स की बात हो रही है, दुनिया समट कर ग्लोबल विलेज की शक्ल इख्तियार कर गई है। नैनो इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्स की और चिप डिज़ाइन की बात हम कर रहे हैं। एक चिप हमारे पास भी है जो यहाँ पर है, दैट weighs almost 3 pounds and that comprises 75% of water, that is made up of 100 billions of neurons जो अल्लाह रब्बुल इज़्ज़त ने हमें दे दी है। तो जब ये देखने को मिलता है तो फिर यही कह सकते हैं कि फ़बिया आला रब्बिकुमा तुकज़्ज़िबान, हम अल्लाह ताला के नाइब ज़मीन पर ज़रूर हैं, लेकिन हम उससे आगे तो नहीं जा सकते हैं। लेकिन कहाँ तक जा सकते हैं ये हमें बताएंगे डॉक्टर बिलाल, हमारे साथ मौजूद हैं, डिस्टिंग्विश्ड स्पीकर हैं। मैं आपसे रिक्वेस्ट करूँगा डॉक्टर साहब कि आप आएँ और इख्तिसार से हमें ये बताएँ कि हम कहाँ तक जा सकते हैं। थैंक यू वेरी मच।
Assalamu alaikum, distinguished guests, Minister Saab, Vice Chancellors, Deans, faculty members, and students. Welcome and thank you for having me at this occasion. Almost साल पहले ये journey start हुआ था, and इसी यूनिवर्सिटी में start हुआ था, where we started thinking कि what needs to be done. मेरे लिए ये सफ़र तकरीबन 20 साल पुराना है, तो I'll start with a short story of how I got into this space. तो आज से तकरीबन 20 साल पहले मैं ग्रेजुएट स्टडीज़ के लिए US गया, यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ सदर्न कैलिफोर्निया। मैंने कोर्सेज रजिस्टर कराए, तो एक कोर्स था जो बड़ा मुश्किल था मिलना, वो था VLSI Design Tools and Techniques. So it was basically the kind of course that we are planning to offer. It was very hard to get into, Barhal professor convinced kiya, I entered. It was my first class, the first lecture that I was supposed to attend at my new university. Monday morning, I go to the class, kamra number dekha, I open the door, and I hear Chinese. Chomp, chomp, chomp. And I close the door and I come back. मैंने कहा शायद मैं गलत क्लास में आ गया। यहाँ पे तो लगता है कि ये इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज इमर्जन क्लास वगैरह हो रही है। तो मैं क्लास के दरवाजे के बाहर खड़ा होकर वेट करने लग गया कि मैं शायद गलत क्लास में आ गया। थोड़ी देर बाद मैंने प्रोफेसर को आते देखा, एंड आई एंटर्ड द क्लास एंड आई रियलाइज्ड नो, आई वाज एट द राइट क्लास। इट वाज अ क्लास ऑफ 36 स्टूडेंट्स, 30 of them were from China or Korea. There were two, one Russian, one American, about 3 Indians, and myself. The industry that we are talking about, we clearly had no idea how fast it was growing. This was not on our radar. So therefore, we were left behind in this industry. उसके बाद 9/11 हुआ and all of the things that we are all aware of. जो कुछ थोड़ा बहुत momentum हमने gain किया था 1-2 साल में, around 2000s, we lost it. And truly, this door became shut for our engineers and engineers coming out of our universities, when all the companies that were operating in this space, that were partnering with semiconductor companies outside, started to shut down. And we ended up with a classical chicken and egg problem कि कौन काम पहले होगा। आज से 3 साल पहले जब मैं पाकिस्तान वापस आया, तो मैंने अपनी यूनिवर्सिटी में प्रपोज किया कि मैं एक बेसिक डिज़ाइन टूल्स एंड टेक्निक्स का कोर्स पढ़ाता हूँ। तो मुझे मेरे हेड ऑफ द डिपार्टमेंट ने कहा कि जी आप बड़े शौक से पढ़ाएं, माशाल्लाह यही आप पढ़ के आए हैं। यू हैव वर्कड इन द इंडस्ट्री इन द US फॉर अबाउट 10 years in this space. I'm sure you will teach very well, but I can guarantee you nobody will come to take your class. मैंने कहा जी क्यों, मतलब बच्चे तो पढ़ने के लिए आते हैं, तो वो पढ़ेंगे, क्यों नहीं पढ़ेंगे? उन्होंने कहा जी कोई इंडस्ट्री नहीं है, so they go into areas जहाँ पे उन्हें jobs नज़र आती हैं. And then sort of things started to fall into the right place, and alhamdulillah over the last year or so, some pieces have started to come together. हमें इस प्रॉब्लम को दोनों एंड से टैकल करना है। हमें इसे चिकन एंड से भी टैकल करना है, विच इज़ द ग्रेजुएट्स ऑफ द यूनिवर्सिटी हैव टू हैव द राइट स्किल सेट, एंड देन देयर नीड्स टू बी अ वाइब्रेंट एंड ग्रोइंग इंडस्ट्री इन पाकिस्तान that can then absorb those graduates and have them work on real world and cutting edge work. So that's really what we're trying to solve here, right? अच्छा, थोड़ा सा वकार साहब ने बहुत अच्छा समराइज किया इस इंडस्ट्री को, where geographically it's located. मैं इसके ट्रेंड्स के ऊपर 1 मिनट स्पेंड करना चाहता हूँ. So if you imagine, we're talking about the microelectronics industry. Clearly, in every industry, there is a growth that's natural to that industry. So for example, more people are buying smartphones, which means you need electronics that goes into a smartphone. More people are buying electric cars, self-driving cars, drones, what have you. So there is a natural growth of industry. The chart that you saw, which was about 5% annual growth, is essentially the natural growth of that industry, correct? In a status quo, इस growth का benefit incumbents को जाता है, उन बड़ी कंपनियों को जाता है जो ऑलरेडी उस स्पेस में प्ले कर रही हैं। the Intels and Apples and Googles and Qualcomms and Broadcoms of the world. They take the benefit. अगर 100 की बजाय 150 लोग स्मार्टफोन खरीदेंगे तो वो स्मार्टफोन भी एप्पल का होगा या सैमसंग का होगा या हुआवे का होगा. So the incumbents get the benefit of that natural growth. But that's only one trend in this industry. Then there is a second trend. The second trend is what we call the dying of Moore's law. This trend started about eight years ago, and now we are at the end of that trend. वो trend क्या है? आज से 15 साल पहले जब मैं ग्रेजुएट स्कूल में था तो हर 2 साल बाद Intel would come up with a new processor and that was twice as fast and half the size of the previous generation. क्योंकि वो half the size था तो Intel could sell it at the same price. So essentially हर 2 साल बाद आपका हार्डवेयर बेहतर हो जाता है without you having to pay cost. See, this was happening because of the manufacturing technology. So a lot of investment went into the manufacturing technology because that was possible and you could do that. It was possible because the physics allowed it to happen. All you had to do was engineer around it. That trend continued, and around mid of 2010s, that decade, that trend started to saturate. Now we are entering the era where we are today. We're entering the era of what's called the end of Moore's law. Physics does not allow us to scale, does not allow us to put more transistors in the same space any further than probably another 2 years. So what does that mean? What means is that the Moore's law enabled software to grow in complexity very quickly. आप हर 2 साल बाद एक नया प्रोसेसर खरीद लेते हैं, वो पिछले प्रोसेसर से बेहतर होता है. Therefore, all you have to do is write better software on top of it. So the software industry was able to ride this wave and grow very fast. With that coming to an end, innovation cannot just happen in software. It has to happen in hardware as well. Now you have to budget those transistors that go on a chip in a smarter way. Depend करता है आपने वो ट्रांजिस्टर किस काम के लिए इस्तेमाल करना है. अगर आपने एक चिप इन कैमराज में यूज़ करनी है जो हमारे पीछे लगे हुए हैं, उस चिप में आप उन ट्रांजिस्टर्स को एक अच्छी इमेज प्रोसेसिंग के लिए इस्तेमाल करेंगे. अगर आपने एक चिप एक ड्रोन में लगानी है जिसने उसको बैलेंस आउट करना है, तो जिस किस्म की प्रपोजल अभी वकार साहब दिखा रहे थे, where you essentially try to control multiple motors and have a camera feed as well and have a communication link as well, then you need a chip for that. So you need many different kinds of chips now, which means you need many more people to design those chips. So the first trend we talked about, the natural growth of the industry. The second trend we talked about is the end of Moore's law that necessitates innovation in this domain. Innovation in the design aspect of these chips. But then there is the third aspect, and that's really what you did not see in that plot, because uske effects abhi tak nazar nahi aa rahe. And that's the great war power, the struggle between China and the US to claim dominance over technologies that enable growth, that enable advancement. वो technologies computation की end पे हैं, बिल्कुल, design of chips and what goes into electronics, and then the software technologies that are built on top of it. So आज से कुछ साल पहले when I used to go into these seminars that would talk about the strategic battle between US and China, it was all about 5G. And US scientists, I was working at Qualcomm. Qualcomm was leading the charge on the US side in developing the 5G standard. And the consensus was, no way can the Chinese catch up. The lead that companies like Qualcomm has is so huge, Chinese cannot catch up. For 5G will be a US technology, सारी दुनिया में deploy होगी, जैसे कि इससे पहले सारी communication technologies US में ही पैदा हुई, उन्हीं की companies ने spread की. But there was something brewing in Huawei in China. The CEO of Huawei had said, this is a do or die for me. Either Huawei does 5G or Huawei is dead. And with that focus, he himself started to lead that effort. Money coming in, Huawei proved US wrong, frankly. Huawei proved Qualcomm wrong. Huawei set up its own 5G, and today the world understands that there are going to be 2 5Gs in the world. One that's dominated by Huawei and one that's dominated by the US and European vendors in it. There's no denying of that. So the battlefield is shifting, and the new battlefield happens to be semiconductors and artificial intelligence. What that does for a country like Pakistan is it opens opportunities. When the two great powers are going to try to claim dominance, It requires manpower, smart, hardworking, qualified manpower to enter that space and join these powers, because they will struggle to fight each other over this. So China, as Dr. Saab also mentioned, created a fund, or announced a fund of $180 billion focused on developing the semiconductor industry in China. The deal they're making is very simple, and I would share that with all the young graduates, because you can see how quickly the market changes. The deal they're offering is very simple, saying this: आपने ये एयर कंडीशनर बनाना है, आप एक चाइनीज़ कंपनी है, आप ये एयर कंडीशनर मैन्युफैक्चर करती हैं। इस एयर कंडीशनर के अंदर एक कंट्रोलर लगा हुआ है जो इसके कंप्रेसर को कंट्रोल करता है। इस वक्त वो चिप आप लेट्स से NXP से खरीदती हैं, NXP इज़ अ यूरोपियन कंपनी। अब वो चिप NXP से खरीदते हैं, आप ये एयर कंडीशनर बनाते हैं, अल्लाह खैर सलाह। So what the Chinese government is offering as a fund through this $180 billion fund is, if you are a Chinese manufacturer and you want to design that chip yourself, clearly there are two costs. One is the cost of the part once it's designed. वो तो आप खरीदते हैं, आपको खरीदना ही पड़ेगा. The other part is the R&D that goes into designing that chip. Correct? So what the Chinese government is offering is, we will subsidize the R&D as long as you can buy this chip when it's manufactured. So जैसे मैंने कहा था, एक ट्रेंड है नेचुरल ग्रोथ ऑफ द इंडस्ट्री, वो तो हो ही रहा है, बट व्हाट दिस डज इज कि उस नेचुरल ग्रोथ को एक्सेलरेट कर दिया जाएगा in the design side by having to redesign chips that already exist, because now they have to be Chinese, and that's where RISC-V comes in. So unlike the current microprocessors that are used in your cell phones or in your laptops, Inca design is owned by two companies: ARM, which is a UK-based company now owned by SoftBank, a Japanese investment bank, and Intel Microarchitecture. So these two microarchitectures are proprietary. If you want to make a chip based on these architectures, you have to get license from these two companies. Otherwise you can't. And Intel doesn't license it out, only ARM does. However, RISC-V is an open architecture, so it opens the opportunity for anyone to design chips that use that architecture. So the Chinese model seems to be very simple. Take a chip that works, redesign it by replacing all the intellectual property that is either US or Japanese or European, and redesign the chip. For that redesign, get the money from the government, and once the part is designed, you sell it the same way that the US or European companies were selling. So you would not see ये जो नई opportunity है, ये आपको इंडस्ट्री की ग्रोथ में नहीं नजर आएगी, राइट? क्योंकि नया AC तो उतने ही बनने हैं जितने बन रहे थे पहले, ACs तो उतने ही बनेंगे, उस AC में वही चिप लगेगी जो पहले लग रही थी, except कि a new chip has to be designed. So yes, there is growth in this industry that's natural, but there's growth in this industry that's coming from these artificial, countries created, people created dynamics. So that's really why I think, alhamdulillah, at a very good time, the government and our institutions have taken this initiative. Okay, we need to intercept this. We need to ride this wave. ये waves हम नहीं create कर सकते. We are too small a country. We are too small a player in this whole space. लेकिन जब ये wave create हो जाए, अगर हम इसको सही टाइम पे और सही तरीके से intercept करें, तो इंशाल्लाह we can create an industry out of it. And now I'll come to the industry and where we are today. So, like I said, in early 2000s, there was a small but reasonable industry in Pakistan that was employing a few hundred people in the space of chip design. Over time, that vanished. Today, though, alhamdulillah, there is a small but rapidly growing industry that is ready to absorb these engineers as they graduate out, as long as they're qualified. Now, what is that industry? उसके 3 तरह की companies हैं जो आज operate कर रही हैं पाकिस्तान में इस space में. One are what we call contract R&D shops. These companies are employed by either our defense department or some other company abroad to develop solution. हमें, for example, हमें एक कैमरा चाहिए जो सर्वेलेंस के लिए इस्तेमाल किया जा सके एट एन ऑयल फील्ड. सो वहाँ पे वो इमेज कैप्चर कर रहा हो ऑयल फील्ड का, ये एल्गोरिदम्स होंगे जो चल रहे होंगे, उसने लीक डिटेक्ट करनी है. Develop us this solution. They get money to execute that whole contract. So there are a lot of companies, especially in Islamabad, that are doing these contract R&D work. They get money to implement that project, they implement it end to end, they deliver it to the customer pays them for that end product, for that prototype जो उन्होंने बनाया है. उसकी commercialization and further growth is up to the customer to do. That's one model. The second model is what are called product companies. These are not doing R&D on contract from another entity, but they're developing their own product. So there's a company that has recently come to Pakistan called Sahil Semiconductors. It's a Bay Area company trying to develop a product, a smart network interface card that can go into data centers. And mashallah, they're building a strong and healthy semiconductor team right here in Pakistan. They started from Karachi, now they're in Lahore, inshallah. As far as I know, they plan to go to Islamabad as well. That's a very worthy effort, and inshallah, as the product becomes successful, which I really hope and pray it does, that team will likely grow. Achhi opportunities niklengi for our engineers to work on products. Then there's the third kind of companies, which are called services companies. These companies do not develop products of their own. Product का अपना एक dynamics है, एक roadmap है. You need certain investment to build a product. सर्विसेज कंपनी इस मॉडल पे ऑपरेट नहीं करती. सर्विसेज कंपनी इस मॉडल पे ऑपरेट करती हैं कि चिप आप बनाएंगे. सो फॉर एग्जांपल योर एनवीडिया और योर कॉलकॉम, माय फॉरनर एम्प्लॉयर. कॉलकॉम एक चिप बनाना चाहता है, एक मॉडम बनाना चाहता है जो फॉर एग्जांपल स्मार्टफोन्स में जाएगा. Qualcomm can contract that work, the actual design work, to other third-party companies and still own the product. There's a lot of work that's happening in that space. मैं उसके थोड़े से आपको numbers भी share करता हूँ. But that's the kind of companies that serve these large multinational corporations are what we call services companies. So to give you an example, India semiconductor industry is almost entirely based on service industry. So I was going through some reports from India Semiconductor Association, and inshallah we should set up something like that in Pakistan as well. Right now, India's services in the semiconductor section is about $52 billion. $52 billion. That's money that Indian companies bring in just to provide service to other companies in this very narrow area of chip design, verification, embedded software design and embedded hardware design. That's it. I'm not talking about application software, जो उसके ऊपर software run कर रहा होता है, enterprise solutions, none of that. I'm talking just about this section, जिसको ये current venture, ये current effort support करने जा रही है इंशाल्लाह. So $52 billion, and where does that $52 billion go? Unlike in a product company where the profits are accumulated by the people who originated the company, the investors in that company, in services work, that money goes to engineers, to the workforce, because you charge for each resource. The better the resource, the more you can charge. The higher the experience level, the more you can charge. So the beauty of that service business is that benefits are shared more broadly. And specifically, they're shared with the engineers and the workers in that company. So based on that theory, I've started a company called 10x Engineers. The purpose is essentially that. इस वक्त हमारा मसला ये है कि we have some graduates who are trained in this sector, but inshallah, over the next year and 2 years, there will be a lot more graduates, inshallah, a huge influx of graduates who will be trained in this sector. However, that training is good enough to enter the job market. It's not good enough for a client that's sitting on the US to give you a project. कहेगा आप तो कल आए हैं, आपको क्या पता, आपने तो ये project पहले कभी नहीं deliver किया हुआ. So what we need to do is to partner with experienced people. So 10x Engineers का thesis ये है कि there are mashallah a lot of Pakistanis who are in the US, in Europe, in South Korea, working in these companies who want to help, who want to level this playing field. इस वक्त ये playing field हमारे लिए level नहीं है, because हमारे neighbor में and Vietnam also by the way, वहाँ पे ये काम पिछले काफ़ी अरसे से हो रहा है. So there's a mature industry. There is a fresh graduate available there. There's a 5-year experienced person, a 10-year experienced person, a 20-year experienced person. हमारे पास वो 5, 10, 15, 20-year experience के लोग नहीं हैं. So the way we operate is we attach a team with each engineer in the US. We call the engineers in the US the 10x engineers, because these are people with real experience, with 10 years of experience working at some of the best semiconductor companies in the world. So we attach a team with each one of them, and these guys together win the contract. So essentially we improve the efficiency of this 10x engineer by backing him up with 10, 15, 20 young engineers in Pakistan. That's the model of 10x engineers. The reason why I fell in love with this model was very simple. It not only helps us to get business, that's the easy part. What it does is it builds a genuine connection between that 10x experienced engineer and the young graduates coming out of our universities. एक भाइयों वाला रिश्ता, जिसमें वो आपकी ग्रोथ में इंटरेस्टेड हैं, आपको सिखाने में इंटरेस्टेड हैं, आपको इम्प्रूव करने में इंटरेस्टेड है, आपको दुनिया के सामने प्रेजेंट करने में इंटरेस्टेड है. People who are joining us are not joining us because this pays them more. It does pay them well, it pays their salaries. But they're doing that because they know कि आज से 20 साल पहले वो उन्हीं कुर्सियों पे बैठे थे जहाँ पे आप स्टूडेंट्स बैठे हैं आज. So they want to provide those opportunities to you that they did not have. And that, my thesis is, behind every startup there's a central thesis. And my thesis is that once you make that human to human connection, where people are genuinely interested in helping other people improve, magic happens, growth happens. I have seen that over the last 1 year when we have done this model, and inshallah we are engaging in that model with 2 or 3 other engineers in the next month or so. Inshallah you'll see those announcements as we roll them out. But my hope is that as you prepare, you keep that in mind. You will need a helping hand. We're trying to provide that helping hand, but you will need that. But inshallah, together, the Pakistanis here, the institutions and government, and then inshallah, Pakistanis in the diaspora, together we can do it. Individually, we can't do. और मुझे वाकई में बेहद खुशी है कि जितनी तेज़ी से मिनिस्टर साहब ने, वाइस चांसलर साहब ने, डॉक्टर वक़ार एंड टीम ने ये सारा पैकेज पुट टुगेदर किया है. ये नॉर्मल नहीं है, ये रूटीन नहीं है, और आई थिंक इसको अप्रिशिएट करना बेहद ज़रूरी है. So on that note, one final thing, what's next? What should happen next? तो मैं 3 लोगों को आई थिंक एड्रेस कर सकता हूँ. ऑन द गवर्नमेंट साइड, मिनिस्टर साहब, आई थिंक द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग, आपने एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट स्टेप ले लिया है. द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग नेक्स्ट इज व्हाट आई कॉल ईज ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस. Help legitimate businesses, people who want to work on top of the table, they don't want any commissions, they don't want any bribes. Help them do their business easily and smoothly. It's not complicated, it's very simple. It took me exactly half an hour, and I'm quoting that because I did that in the last few weeks. It took me half an hour and only one form that had about 10 questions to create my US corporation. That's not possible in Pakistan today, unfortunately. It's not something I know your ministry can do, but I think the more we speak about these issues, these simple issues, the better it will be because the voice will get heard. Ease of doing business is the most important thing. Some of the people in my industry may not like me saying this, but genuinely, we don't need rent-free office spaces. We should be able to work like everyone else in the world. We don't need government subsidies in terms of handouts to companies or to individuals. We don't need that. Let us compete in the world. Let us do that fairly. Bring dollars to Pakistan. Bring work to our engineers so that we can do real high-value work. Just get the government out of the way. Make it easier to do. Baki sab cheezein, they will go to the people who are connected. They will go to the people who don't want to do an honest business. So create the opportunity where legitimate, honest businesses can grow and scale based on the quality of the work they do. And inshallah, I'm certain that with these engineers and with these kind of experts and dedicated faculty, we can do it, inshallah. The next sort of group that I want to talk to, they are the faculty members who are here, the deans. Very similar. You have, speaking to the vice chancellors and deans, you have some very dedicated faculty members who want to do right by their own students. Enable them, support them, retain them. Enable them to do their work, support them, and that can just be a pat on the back. It can be, आपको क्या मसला है, किस तरह की लैब चाहिए, किस तरह का कमरा चाहिए. They don't need a whole lot. They just need that space. And then finally, try to retain them. I know of a lot of faculty members who have left. In this area, 5-10 साल universities में काम किया, and they have left because of the environment we are giving them. It's not purposeful. हम जानबूझ के नहीं करते. पाकिस्तान एक मुश्किल मुल्क है. मैं 18 साल बाद पाकिस्तान वापस आया था. अभी भी चीखें निकल जाती हैं. But हम ये कर सकते हैं. It's doable. सिर्फ अगर हम थोड़ी सी स्पेस दे दें लोगों को कि वो अपना काम सिंसेरिटी के साथ अच्छे तरीके से कर सकें, थोड़ा सा ट्रस्ट दे दें कि maybe they'll do something. They're not going to, yes, there is a bad sheep once in a while, but generally, if we lean towards that they're trustworthy people, they're good people, inshallah, they will reward that with trust in their students, trust in their own abilities, and trust in Allah, okay, good things will happen, inshallah, if we do that. And finally, to the students, only one thing, there are no shortcuts. You have to work hard. We are behind. The playing field is not level. there are no shortcuts. The only variable you and I control is how we spend our 24 hours. If you are spending your 24 hours on TikTok and Instagram, that's a choice you make. That's not a choice imposed upon you. And that choice will reflect in the kind of future you have and the kind of future that we as a country have. So make those choices with that in mind. Wherever you find an opportunity to learn something, maximize for learning. Don't optimize for 5,000 rupees, 10,000 rupees, title, rank, stability, shosha. That's all nonsense. The only thing that matters is the content of your personality, what you know. Are you a person who can be trusted? Are you a good professional? Focus on that. Don't try to take shortcuts. कभी भी ज़िंदगी में इन चीज़ों से अट्रैक्ट ना हो, अट्रैक्ट हों अच्छे क्वालिटी के काम से, अच्छे क्वालिटी के कैरेक्टर से. So that's all I had to say. Thank you so much. I'm sorry for taking a little bit longer than I think what I was supposed to. But it was a pleasure talking to you, and inshallah we'll keep talking. Thank you. Allah Hafiz.